Hi everybody, welcome back to Capricorn Radio and welcome to Capricorn TV livestream today. I am joined by my co-host Heather Osborn today. Hi Heather.
Hi, how are you, James?
Great to see you again, Heather. Great to see you. Here we are again for another blockbuster show, and we're going to be talking to Brad Olsen today, Heather. A little bit of bio before I bring on Brad. Always good to do so, to get a bit of background. He's on the call waiting. Brad Olsen's passion for writing goes back far beyond his book publishing business or the online content he produces. His books have reached a wide audience across the country and around the world, and he's also won numerous awards for doing so. His work has been reviewed in top publications and continues to lecture nationwide on various subjects. He's appeared on dozens of television and nationally syndicated radio shows over the course of 2 decades. And I believe he's just been on with George Norrie's Beyond Belief, which we're going to probably open with. So without further ado, hi Brad, you're very welcome to the show today.
Hi there, James. Thanks for having me on. It's great to finally connect with you. I know we have a lot of mutual friends, so it's great to put the name to the face.
Yeah, and it is. It's great to do it like this. You know, we have a lot of mutual friends. We just found out we've got a mutual friend, Scott Walter, and it's a small world out there. It really is. Of course, we're going to talk about your book today, Sacred Places. I guess just tell us a bit the Beyond Belief. That must be interesting to do a show with George Norrie.
Yeah, he's a legend. He's really cool guy. We got along great. We did a show similar to what I think we're going to do today, and that is examining some of the sacred places and the mysteries of the world. And he was just very easygoing guy. Great to go out to Boulder, Colorado, which is a super cool college town right on the edge of the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains, and just hit it and quit. I was back about 48 hours later.
Oh wow, road trip. Brad, tell me about Brad Olsen, the bit that we don't read in the bio. Tell us what's your passions, what drives you. This is something you're obviously excited about. It's an adventure to you. You sound like an adventurer.
Yeah, well, I am. I sure love to travel. I just realized how much I missed it after this short trip, wishing I could have stayed in Colorado and hiked up to a lake or something, but life calls me back, including this show, James. I guess what I really like is just connecting with people, my friends, my family, playing beach volleyball. I live just 20 blocks from the Pacific Ocean here in San Francisco. So heading out on a sunny day like today when I'm free and just kind of reconnecting with nature and people. I think we don't get enough of that.
I don't think we do. You know, it's something I've been doing something very recently is connecting back with Eru's land, the land of Ireland, and the goddess mythology. You've also took a little bit of a direction with esoteric material, Brad. How come that changed the direction a couple of years ago?
Right. Well, I had been a travel writer for over a decade, and at about almost 10 years ago, I realized travel's actually having a tough time with the internet age, because you can pretty much just look up any trip you want and you can do the research on Easter Island to Antarctica to Zimbabwe to Angola, and the book market demand has dropped significantly. So about 10 years ago I was kind of doing a little soul searching what I'm going to get into, and these subjects, these esoteric subjects, which I should just define real quickly, is just the information or subject matter that's available to a select few that is not widely known. When it becomes widely known, the actual terminology becomes exoteric. So these subjects were just vastly fascinating to me ever since I traveled around the world and then collected the information for the Sacred Places guides. And in fact, in many ways, it's just an adjunct, it's just a continuation of some of the research I was doing on these places and just getting into the larger mystery of some of the more profound sacred places that I had described in the previous books.
Oh, awesome. You know, and we're going to talk about, well, we can talk about anything today. It's a free flowing show, but Sacred Places of Europe, I tell you, it's ironic because I just been to some of the stuff that's in the book by pure chance. Hunnebeddens in Netherlands. I just come back and I did all the Hunnebeddens, which is basically the Giant's Grave in Dutch. But I was in Holland there. I did the 54 of them in 3 days, Brad. So
Wow.
I videotaped them all as well. I have video footage of them all. So it was nice to have that show coming up, knowing that I was going to the same place. And I've also been Bosnia last year, and obviously Ireland. I've been to everything that's in the island, but there are stuff in the book that I actually wasn't aware of, Brad. And you may say that about the travel writing or places and sacred places and books like that, but it's a privilege for me to read it. So don't knock that back. I mean, and I'm a well-versed traveller too. So I just found there was places there I actually wasn't aware of. Now, I'm sure if I had have searched and trawled the internet long enough, I probably would have looked for it. But it's sometimes nice to have them in a collective genre and done like that. I like that.
Well, that's true. And I'm not saying that travel writing is completely dead. I was just looking for some new projects, maybe break out from the mold of just being a travel writer. And I'm really glad that you explored the book and some of the places in there. And I think there is quite a bit for anybody to travel and go to these locations and find something new. It took me many trips to Europe, including a big long one for 3 months in 2004 when I was coming up with this information. But the way I wrote the books is to try to keep them timeless. So a lot of things like the Hunabed, they're not going away anywhere quick, and
3,300
nobody's going to move them. So that getting their information will probably be a constant forever.
3,300
so
BC.
That part of it is easy. Yeah.
3,300 BC. They've been there. You know what I like about the Dutch as well? Is they really take care of their national monuments. I mean, in the Drenthe region, everything's signposted. It's all logically numbered. You can get to them all really easy. It's all signposted. It's geared up for it. And I see other places that are like Ireland is just forget about it. We signpost our towns, and you go like 8 miles away and you have no more signs anymore. It's like it's bizarre. It's like the total opposite. Tell us in that respect. Tell us about the different countries you've been to, just in a European sense, before we get into some sacred places. What's the parallels? Do you like that journey of discovery, where sometimes it's easy to get to and sometimes it's a mystery? Tell us about some of the comparisons with all the different countries.
Oh, sure. Well, I would agree with you that the Dutch do make it quite easy, and the Spanish do not. I was in Spain. Even had a pretty detailed map and had to just basically cry uncle on a few locations. I just could not find them. And unfortunately, in a place like Spain, my Spanish was poor and their English was poor, and that sure didn't help when I went into a pub or a restaurant. However, with places like Holland, whose people are very fluent in English, and of course Ireland and England, where it's your native tongue, getting around and finding locations made it a whole lot easier.
Sure. Tell us about Ireland. Tell us about your time in Ireland. I'm always interested in what people think of Ireland, being an Irishman, of course.
Well, I love the Emerald Isle. It was my first trip to Ireland was in 1988 when I was right out of college and backpacking around and just kind of sort of extenuating my college education and drinking habits into the pubs of Ireland, but found the people extraordinarily pleasant and the landscape and things to see and do. Just always need more time. For such a small country, it sure is chock full of things to see and do.
Sure. Heather, you want to jump in for a moment?
In addition to Ireland, another place that's one of my favorite places to go is some of the sites you mentioned in England, like Silbury Hill. I love the fact that you describe it as a goddess site with the pregnant goddess mother, because a lot of travel writers would not discuss that. Could you describe that a little bit for us and some of the stories of your experiences there?
Oh, sure. Well, Silbury Hill is the largest earthen mound, not only in England, but all of Europe. To me, it was very reminiscent of the mound sites we have here in North America. And I also do a book called Sacred Places in North America, which chronicles many of the largest sites, as well as one called Sacred Places Around the World. Silbury Hill is really fascinating, not only because it's this Neolithic mound site that once had a moat around it, but all around that area is the hot spot for crop circles in the summertime, including some really fantastic ones. And I was just today rereading and re-editing a chapter in Future Esoteric, which I also have a chapter on the crop circles. And this is again how the Esoteric Series books and the Sacred Places books parallel. And was reading about a police officer a few years ago who was driving by and saw some people out in a freshly made crop circle, came up close and shouted at him, and they all turned to look at him. They were really tall with blonde hair, and he felt like this crackling electromagnetic feeling around the crop circle. And those three very tall men just ran off faster than he'd ever seen. So he called in some paranormal researchers, and they almost immediately looked into it and verified his story that what he saw indeed were some ET characters. So that's what's so fascinating about these sacred places and how they tie into the esoteric subjects as well, is that many times you will have a sacred mountain, like right here where I'm at in California, Mount Shasta. Not only has it been a sacred mountain for many, many centuries, but also a hotbed for paranormal activity. And so to answer your question, I think that's what really fascinated me about Silbury Hill, is that it has all of these adjuncts or side attractions such as crop circles and other things surrounding it.
Right, exactly. Do you think there's some kind of connection also to Avebury? Because you mentioned that within the same context, that there might be a connection between some of these sites in terms of ley lines and other energies?
Yes, exactly. And I find that to be equally interesting too, this dating back to Sir Alfred Watkins, who was the author of a book called The Old Straight Track, and then he was among the very first people to recognize that ley lines often attach to these sacred places in various places around England, and that was the focus of his research. But I've carried it on a little farther and found that this is an occurrence that can be found worldwide.
Wow.
Exactly.
Do you want to talk about maybe other types of stuff between megaliths, sacred cathedrals, and sacred places like that, where we see a crossover between paganism into Christianity, and you see like these ley lines are kind of on both the churches are on and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And when I was on George Norrie's show a few days ago, Beyond Belief, we talked about the Chartres Cathedral in France, and I explained to him that originally this had been a pagan shrine, probably because of some form in the landscape that is no longer visible, because around the cathedral there's now a big town. When Christianity came to France, it became a small church. It then got torn down and became a chapel, and then it got torn down, and the returning Knights Templar made the magnificent Chartres Cathedral that we see today. So this is a very common feature of many sacred places, especially the very old ones, that they have often had many different various forms before they became what we see today. So that does also tie into the ley line theory, that a lot of these places are tied together with this etheric earth energy that may not be visible to the naked eye, or perhaps is now harder to detect because of all the development and expressways and strip malls that now pockmark the landscape. Maybe it was a lot easier for the ancients to see this before any development was on the landscape.
But it does imply that the builders of the cathedrals, all of them, if they're all on straight lines, that they knew about this knowledge. They had predetermined knowledge of these lays and the earth currents.
I believe that's correct. How they were able to do it, or maybe they had things at their disposal such as dowsing that have kind of gone the wayside, although there are still plenty of dowsers, and they use their craft of witching for water to find wells or flowing water. And this is also in tune with how they can detect the ley lines of the planet. And you did mention Neolithic sites or the megalithic sites. What I find so fascinating about them are the alignments that come with almost all of them. And you could have seen that at the Hunebedens, that they are, the entrances are aligned directly towards the rising sun on the summer solstice, in the case of Newgrange on the winter solstice,
Yep.
also in Ireland at Low Crew on the equinoxes, or in the in-between days between the solstice and the equinox. So it tells me that the ancients had a profound understanding of the working of the cosmos and built these Neolithic and megalithic sites in accordance.
Yeah. You know, I'm so delighted to have a guest on my show that's actually been to Lough Crew and knows about Lough Crew, because everybody flocks to Newgrange and Stonehenge, and they are, you know, don't get me wrong, they are awesomeness wrapped in awesomeness. But there's other great sites that you have in this book that it's really is a duty and a service that you've done to these Neolithic monuments to show routes to get there, because many of people that come to Ireland, they just don't, they go to Newgrange because it's easy to get to, and they don't go down the road less travelled, Brad. And I think you've done that, and you've done a great service for that. Hey, isn't Lough Crew though? Just tell the people about how magical Lough Crew is in your own words.
Well, I do have to be honest, I haven't been to Lough Crew. Unfortunately, I wrote about it. I know quite a bit about it. I know the alignments, and seen many pictures and maps of the setting of it. That is in my on my bucket list. Get back to the Emerald Island, do a bunch of those.
Oh, sure.
Same with like the Hill of Tara. I definitely want to go to those, and also see a lot more of the round towers, which have some incredible properties to them as well, and a lot of mysteries surrounding them.
The round towers, people talk about them having some strange acoustics at them, and that there's also some sort of ionization, that the grass, if you look around the round towers, the grass is growing extremely thick and lush and green, and the Irish grass is green anyway. Trust me, it's like fluorescent almost. But when you see those round towers, there's some sort of strange energy around them.
And the same is true with crop circles, that compasses will
Spin.
run round and round. Cell phones don't work. Sometimes power goes off in nearby towns. Again, I think there's a lot of mysteries with the earth and with living things, including us, when we interact with these sites, or when we go to crop circles, the genuine ones that are freshly formed. And by doing so, it's a journey not only to visit these places, but I think it helps us expand as people, and certainly makes us better and more well-rounded in what we know about in the world.
Do you think that these ancient sites, these sacred sites, are like teaching mechanisms? Maybe that's their purpose. I don't know. Maybe they're like teaching mechanisms to us today to understand ourselves.
Well, they're teaching mechanisms to me, that's for sure. Sounds like you guys too.
Sure. Heather, you want to jump in?
Was there any particular site, talking about sensing the energies, that really struck you, like more so than some of the other sites?
You mean worldwide, or specifically in Europe or Ireland?
Specifically in Europe, since we're talking about that book right now. But one particular site maybe where you felt the energies more so, and it really stood out in your mind.
Well, certainly Stonehenge is just one of the greatest places anybody could visit. Coming up upon it, it almost just jumps out of nowhere, because it's from a long ways away. It doesn't look that big, but of course, when you walk amongst these giant stones, it's quite large. And if you just think about the context of how they had to go to so much effort to not only quarry and dress these stones, but to haul them out there to the Salisbury Plain, which is just a barren, grassy landscape, no trees in the immediate area. And the fact that the blue stones, which is this outer ring, were quarried all the way in Wales, over 100 miles away. What an effort that was to get these stones out here. So what was it about this location and those stones that had to travel such an immense distance to get there? And then what we find about it is that it's a very elaborate astronomical timepiece that you can, again, watch the rising, setting, rising solstice sun in the middle of Stonehenge. The heel stone is a perfect marker. So this led to the science of archaeoastronomy, and that is looking at all the details of archaeological sites and then tying in the astronomical
different pieces of the puzzle to create the idea that these monuments were actually used for keeping time among many other functions of a ceremonial nature.
And you just do such a wonderful job in the book, Brad, of mixing these well-known sites along with lesser-known ones. Like James was mentioning earlier, there were sites mentioned in the book that I hadn't heard of, and I do a lot of research on these kinds of sites. Can you maybe share with us a couple of these little gems of lesser-known sites, maybe that our audience wouldn't know, that you would recommend visiting?
Sure. Well, I spent about a week in the Carnac region of France, which is just right over the pond from you guys. The English Channel on the Brittany shores of France, the northern westernmost point. And these megaliths in Carnac, while similar to the aging and the same type of people who built that, certainly they had some connection with the people of Ireland and Britain. Carnac is very unique because they're just row upon row upon row of these standing stones in certain areas around this little town. But they also have these giant menhirs, which are just single standing stones. In fact, the biggest one in the world, and it's flat on its side now and broken in a few pieces. And as well as very enigmatic carvings around Carnac, and some of these long barrows, which are these megalithic dolmen chambers that I think if somebody was making a trip to France, they should definitely go to the Carnac region. And so your lesser known sites are just surrounding Carnac. It's not just in the town where these long rows are that most people see, but even down in Arville, which is a very small town that has megaliths just right in the city square, and all around the region. And the French are kind of like the Dutch, where they are very proud of these monuments, and they do have signs to get you there. So we did have a very easy time with our rental car finding many of these locations.
Wow. Yeah, you know, I've been Brittany about 4 or 5 times, probably 5, I think. I still haven't seen it. I've only seen a small percentage. It's like the Disneyland of megaliths, I think. It's crazy,
yeah.
You know, and yeah, there are famous places in Brittany that people flock to, like Gavrigny and Carnac, but the surrounding towns and the surrounding territories, it just keeps on going. It's like, it's absolutely riddled with stuff, you know. You need to get off the beaten path, I think, is the point.
It really is, and you really need to have some kind of a private vehicle, because I think you'd be very hard-pressed to find a tour group that's going to hit them all. Although I think there'd probably be a demand for such a tour group, maybe using my book as a way to get there. Yeah, well,
but, you have 108. You have 108 destinations in Europe in the book. So yeah, I think it's a great collection. It really is, and it's got everything in there: pagan, Viking, cathedrals, megaliths, Neolithic, all the stuff. It shows you the kind of links between them all. And I get very focused on the Neolithic stuff and stuff, but I'm coming around to this idea now that the lays have been used and utilized across the centuries, and it's just one group recycling the ideas, just recycling the ideology.
And I think also, if you look at the length of time that the Neolithic people were building, we're talking about many hundreds or even thousands of years that they had to work on these large-scale projects. And when you get to a dolmen site, which is basically just megalithic stones holding up a capstone, creating a chamber, you realize, why would anybody go to so much trouble to build to haul this massive slab? I mean, wouldn't bricks have solved the problem easier? But clearly they had the intention of having these things last, because the inner core of a dolmen are the megaliths, and usually that's all that's left, because originally there were other smaller stones packed around it and then earth on top. So what they're doing, my feeling is that they're creating earth energy by having a compartment that was human made but still in the earth. And then when you connect that with the alignments,
and sometimes with the quartz crystal that can be found in the rocks, maybe they were able to do something of a magical nature that had something to do with their religion. I find a lot of the theories that these dolmens and the barrows were burial tombs only exclusively. Perhaps people were buried there, I have no doubt about that. They found bones and burial items, but it would seem to me that they had a purpose before the burials, especially when you account for the alignments that can be quite clearly made from the chambers, how they were orientated to catch this rising solstice, sunrise, or sunsets.
And even in addition to that, I mean, look at the cathedrals that are on the same lays. I mean, there are saints buried there, there are people buried there. Do we call those tombs? They're places of worship, and they're places where people go in and they release their energy. Maybe that's why they're there. They're soaking up the energy of the lays and they're releasing them through worship. Maybe that's why they're so attractive and on these energy sources, but we don't call those tombs. So why do we call the other ones tombs? It seems we need to get our head out of the gutter there and rework our thinking on it.
That's a great point. Perfectly illustrated. Then the fact that we just don't know a whole lot about the ritual aspects of many of these Celtic builders, what they were up to, what they found so important. We know that they worshiped nature. Large oak trees were very common to have church-like cathedrals under the branches of these large old-growth trees, not only in the British Isles and mainland Europe, but all the way up to Scandinavia. And I visited Gamma Uppsala and several of the other old pagan sites of Scandinavia too, and I found a common theme running throughout, not only that there are also megaliths up there in Scandinavia, but this same sort of adherence to worshiping in nature. So I think maybe the dolmens that were creating this cavern-like recess had that in mind, that this was something very important to them.
Yeah, you know, I just come back from a conference in Germany, and I have an offer to go to Uppsala in Sweden and in Norway as well. So I'm super excited, and again, the timing of the book is great because I've got a good little pointer of places to go. Scandinavia is not a place I'm well versed in. I've only been to Sweden once, and that was southern Sweden. But I think the Scandinavian story has yet to be told, Brad. I think it's because it's off the beaten track. Everybody flocks to Ireland, the UK. It's easy to get to. There's massive airports there. There's an influx of people in and out. Newgrange gets something like 300,000 visitors a year now, Brad. Something like that. It's
wow.
Yeah, it's like our population's only 5 million. It's like it's like a major bank balance to the Irish government for that monument, you know. But like the Scandinavian stuff gets ignored, Brad. It really does.
And it shouldn't, because Scandinavia was among the very last countries of Europe to be Christianized. So their heritage in their pagan beliefs goes back a long time, but it doesn't get the kind of attention that it needs or deserves, because let's just face it, when Christianity overtook the European countries and cultures, they did the very best they could to wipe out as much of the vestiges of the old pagan religions as they could.
Sure. It's funny you say that about the oaks as well. I live in County Derry in Ireland, and Derry in Irish means oak grove. They worship the oak trees here. This is the oak tree county. So, but
well, when you go to Gamma Uppsala, definitely check out the site of the oldest pagan Viking temple, which of course is gone, but the mounds are there, these 3 fantastic mounds. And right next to this temple, which was actually one of the few pagan temples that was recorded by a Christian traveling monk who somehow evaded being killed, which is kind of what they did to those type of people. But his name was Adam of Bremen, and he was able to describe this pagan temple at Gamma Uppsala, and it was something to behold. And right next to it is this giant oak tree with the grisly practice of hanging corpses So they did these things, these ritual sacrifices that were completely abhorrent to the Christian monastery traveling monks and so forth. And he was able to record the whole thing, and they showed where the kings were buried in these mounds, and the town of Gama Uppsala is quite beautiful. So highly recommend you go there.
Oh, wow. Gotta check it out. Heather, you want to jump in at this point?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, one of my areas of research is goddess mythology and goddess sites, and you have a wonderful inclusion of sacred feminine sites in the book. Marian sites related to the Black Madonna and ancient goddess sites. I was wondering, in your research and looking at these sites, did you usually find some kind of corollary between, if there was a Marian site there, that it could be traced back to an ancient goddess site somehow?
In many cases there was, such as Glastonbury has them, other locations in Europe. I also published, a woman named Karen Tate did the 4th book in the series called Sacred Places of Goddess. She did the heavy lifting here as far as the research on the goddess sites, but certainly the ones that had parallel dual meaning I was happy to include also in the sites that I wrote up. So she would be more the authority on that. I can only give a sort of anecdotal reply to that. Other than that, certainly many of these sites had them, and the Marian sites, especially down in Spain in Montserrat, you can go up and see the Black Madonna. It's still there in a cave. The reason it's black is because it's totally filled with candle soot, and they leave it that way. Probably for good reason, because you have to either take a tram up to the Montserrat Monastery just outside of Barcelona. It's a perfect day trip. Again, I give all the directions how to get there and options for hiking up there. And then you walk around this craggy spine top of a mountain to get to this cave, and there's the Black Madonna, and it's still highly trafficked sacred place. A lot of people go in there. A lot of people finding what they're looking for, I think. Just like at Lourdes, France, also Marian site that's related to healing and the waters of this miracle that happened in the 19th century. Scientists have looked at the water of Lourdes under a microscope and found that it's clustered molecules. It's not just single molecule water, but they're clustered together, and kind of like Dr. Emoto studied water molecules when people were angry, and then they became very chaotic under the microscope, or when somebody said, "Oh, I love you, water, you're so beautiful, you're going to give me the nourishment and the refreshment I need, and thank you, and I love you." And then these beautiful crystalline formations at a molecular level showed up on the microscope. And this is also what's true at Lourdes, and it's one of the only 5 that I know of, 5 sites in the entire world where clustered molecular water comes naturally out of the ground. You don't even have to tell the water you love it. It already knows. It's already there for you.
Wow.
You know, I've been to Montserrat, actually, and it was quite the journey to get there because, like you said, it's up the mountain. So I took a wrong turn, and eventually I got there because I was driving myself. But it really was magical. It was worth the journey to get up there, yeah, and to touch the icon.
Oh, you saw the Black Madonna then?
Yes, I did. I was able to reach through and touch it. Yeah, it was amazing. But it was getting close to closing time by the time I got up there. So it was but it was good because it was getting a little darker, and the atmosphere was more fitting, I think, for the journey up there.
Yeah. You can imagine what it would have been like for pilgrims who made the journey on foot to finally get there, and it's a mountain trail, and it's steep off the sides, and you come to this cave, and in some ways it's not overwhelming, it's not huge, it's not so spectacular, but if you put into account the time and effort it must have taken the pilgrims to get up there, it must have seemed very rewarding once at the top.
Definitely. And you've got a lot of sites in the book that were ancient pilgrimage sites, or, you know, in the medieval period, like Canterbury and Compostela. So there's that interesting parallel there between a lot of the sites.
Yeah, I did little bit of the Compostela route myself. I didn't do the whole journey from France or Germany, but around the cathedral in Santiago, it's quite spectacular, because that's where all the pilgrimage routes come together. Most people think it's just the northern route, but it actually has routes that come from the south and from the southeast, and several different routes. There's even one that comes from the Bay of Biscay, come down and meet at Santiago, and then as a final pilgrimage, after you receive your little penance slip, because many times if somebody was convicted of a crime, the judge would give them a choice. You can either do the route to Compostela and come back with your little certificate, or we're going to throw you in jail. Well, that should be a no-brainer. What are you going to do? And then so after you get your certificate, you're kind of like, wow, great. I can go back and get out of all this trouble I'm in. But you can just do another half-a-day walk to Land's End, and that's really spectacular, Cape Finisterre. And it's just really amazing to be kind of, it feels like you're at Land's End. It's actually not the westernmost point. There's another point in Portugal that sticks out a little bit more, but not quite as dramatic as this place. And then, of course, the symbol for doing the trek on the Compostela route is a great big clamshell, like the symbol of Shell Oil, that you would put on your staff. So once you made it all the way there, you get the shell, you have your certificate, and then you're going back free man.
Wow. I want to mention Rennes-le-Château, because Rennes-le-Château is in the book. It's not a place I've been to personally, but it's got a lot of legend about it. Is this a mystical place? Is this got the right to be in the book for mysticism and mystical and all the stuff we see in the movies and all the hype we see?
Oh, it really does. It's well deserved.
Really?
When I arrived there, there's not a whole lot. It's a very interesting town, and again, here was a site that had prehistoric people that had been co-opted by the Romans, that had been also part of the Christian mystic group, whose name is slipping me, the Albigean Cathars, had a place there, and apparently they were the ones who left some kind of treasure. Of course, Catholics were there, and what we see today is a very small, modest chapel on the top of like a mesa hill with a tiny little cute French village all around it, and this beautiful little watchtower that was more contemporary. But there was a priest that lived there about 150 years ago, Seigneur, and he came across something. He found something very valuable in that little chapel, and he was extraordinarily rich. He was a guy that built the watchtower and did a lot of other things, but he would not reveal what it was or where the source of his wealth was. So not only is it a beautiful location with a very historical background, but it links in this these Cathars, who was a form of Christianity that were wiped out during a crusade that happened right there in south of France. It started in the nearby town of Albi, and it became the Albicien, probably not pronouncing that right, crusade. And they basically did their best to wipe them out. And there was another castle up in the Pyrenees called Monseigneur, which was like the final holdout, which is one of the 108 sacred places. But really, if I were given the choice of going to one of these locations, as well as Toulouse, France, has a lot of Albigean relics and the characteristic red brick buildings, because they didn't have the quarried stone like other locations, I would go to Rennes-le-Château, because it's just so many mysteries about it, and great little bookstores there. You can get maps, kind of like treasure maps, and hunt around. I don't think anybody's going to find anything, but it's kind of cool. I mean, it's sort of like a Indiana Jones exploration of sacred places when you go there.
That's what people are looking for too, Brad, when they go. They want a bit of mystery. They want to see something quirky and different. And you can't just keep going and doing megaliths. And you need a break between that and some levels of history, different layers. And I think that's what we got in the book. We got 108 awesome places. And I like the way you described that there, because you're always faced with a choice. You either have to go left on the map or right on the map. You need to go to somewhere else in time and money, and you know, you're always looking for another destination, and it has to practically work too. So that's a tough choice. But I love the maps in the book, and I love the way they're laid out, and as a little traveller jet setting around Europe. Do you feel any energy at these places in a physical sense? Do you get like zapped with, like, is there any particular place that you remember that really zapped you with like a heavy energy?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Many times in the cathedrals, that's sort of an easy one, just because they're so beautiful with the stained glass windows and the light coming through of different colors. But I would say places like Rennes-le-Château, I had that feeling. Sometimes it's like deja vu. Wow. Maybe something to do with reincarnation, or feel like I've been there before. For example, when I went to Pompeii for the first time, I felt like I totally knew my way around the city, and of course I'd never been there or even studied a map of it. So there's things like that come back that are very interpersonal, and I don't think it could really be the same for any one person. It's very much an internal quest when you go to these places, and that's why I think they're so important, because people are going to discover things not only about these locations, which are World Heritage sites in most cases and very well deserving of the protection that they receive, but I think they're going to find a lot about themselves when they go to these places. And that was kind of one of my motivations for doing these books and then releasing this material in the format of 108. And of course, as you said, on the maps that are included in the book, there's far more information than I could put into describing these 108 places or some of the side attractions nearby. And that's where the maps came in really handy, because clearly there's more than 108 places in Europe. There's probably more like 1,800 or more. And that's where the maps could help me not only draw the ley lines that I knew of, but also many of the other sites in each country that certainly needed to at least be represented on a map.
Sure. You know what I like about Europe, and not to speak disparaging of America or any other countries. America's got like the Grand Canyon and all the Colorado mountains, and it's got the awesomeness of landscapes. But I mean, in Europe, you got 40 cultures, you got 40 languages or whatever, you got 40 different countries. You got countries that are like the size of a postage stamp, and they're so unique in their identity, and the history of just keeps going back eons. And it's like a playground. If you like culture and you like history, you could just disappear in Europe. You could go into Europe, nobody'd even know who you were. You just drift around and you just lose yourself, and then you come back out again. It's like, hey, that was great. That's what I love about it. That's what I love about it.
And you're right. Some of the countries of Europe are the size of our small states, and they're just chock full of so much culture and different languages and different people that, yeah, you could get lost there and spend not months but years and still never cross the same path.
Sure. You've been on Ancient Aliens, I believe, Brad. I think it was 5. It wasn't the recent one. It was 5 or 6. I think I seen you on.
Yeah, season 6, 2 episodes.
Tell us about how that came about.
Oh, well, like all the PR opportunities I get a call one day to producers. Wow. Tell us about what you know about, well, they were asking me about this site in the South Pacific called Non-Madal.
Yeah.
And I told them what I knew, and then since I have all my books on Google Books, information can be easily searched. So I don't think Non-Madal is too popular of a search site. So when mine came up,
very hard to get to though.
It's very, very hard to get to, but so they were very interested in how the giant basalt, I'll call them logs, although they're made out of stone, were put into place. And it's, if you know the Lincoln logs, how you could build
interlock them,
interlock together. That's how they built Non-Madal, and they're on these artificial islands. The first explorers called it the Venice of the Pacific because there's all these water channels. And then these basalt logs are just highly charged with magnetic energy. So compasses will spin out of control, and they just have all these strange properties. But why ancient aliens came calling is they said, well, how did they move those blocks? And I said, well, my theory is auditive levitation. And I have examples in my book, Future Esoteric, how the Tibetans used to do it. And I do talk about this, spoke with George Norrie about it a few days ago on Beyond Belief. The way that it was observed in the 1930s, a very prominent physician from Sweden,
Dr. Jarl,
who was, yeah, that's right. He was friends with someone who would become a very high-ranking lama, and one of the elder lamas needed some medical care. So they had Dr. Jarl come out, and you probably know this story.
Yeah,
and
no, I read this article. You have an article on this somewhere. I remember reading this. That's why I just remember Dr. Jarl. But I actually have read your article on this a while ago now.
Well, I have a little added information to that, which actually makes it even more fascinating how they were able to put huge megalithic boulders in the center of 3 concentric rings. Okay, and one of the rings was drumming, another was trumpets, and the third was chanting monks. Okay, and hundreds of them, like the whole monastery cleared out. They go to this field, and in the center of the 3 concentric rings is this boulder. So Dr. Jarl and a couple of people he was with were standing there watching, and they would get the music and the chanting just so loud, it was like a cacophony. And all of a sudden, all of the heads and the trumpets started moving up, and the boulder started shaking, and it started going up with it, and then it moved right up to a ledge on the cliff face where they were collecting the boulders. And they did this for several other stones. An oxen cart would bring in the next boulder, and they do the whole thing over again, and he was able to witness the whole thing. In fact, I have his original illustrations of the concentric circle and then how they did the auditive levitation.
Wow.
And the example I give is, think about how a opera singer can shatter a wine glass with her voice. So we know that auditive sound waves can affect matter in the material world. Now, if you were able to match the acoustic properties of, say, that boulder with another acoustic property made artificially, that levitation theoretically is quite possible. Now, you can go on YouTube and see scientists levitating bowling balls and frogs and a whole bunch of other items in the laboratory. So this shouldn't come as a surprise that levitation is very much doable. Now, doing it with a whole bunch of monks is a different ball game, but
sure,
in my mind, conceivable.
Yeah, and just to draw attention for the audience, Google Nan Madol, and you tell me how they built Nan Madol. 50-ton sleepers of basalt columns, something like 96 man-made islands, Brad, all stitched together to make a city. It's actually more volume than the Great Pyramid, I believe, and they go into the ocean. They're like the foundations are in the ocean as well. And there's nobody there. There's not a workforce there to do this. There's not a workforce, a local workforce.
No, and the natives consider it haunted.
Yeah,
they won't spend the night there.
Why is that? Why the natives think it's like evil or mysterious, or?
Yeah. Wow. Then they don't take any credit for it either. It's just the ancients built it. That's about all they know. They'll take groups out there in the daytime, but they won't spend a night there because there are many signs of paranormal activity, lights, orbs going around the channels at night, strange sounds. It just freaks out the natives. They won't do it. Few people have been out there, and few people have also had catastrophic consequences by spending a night out there. I cover it in my book, Sacred Places Around the World.
Yeah.
And that's sort of just the tip of the iceberg of all the weird things that occur there.
Yeah, I had David Hatcher Childress on before, and I had a great conversation with him about it, and he said he was spooked himself. He said it was just spooky to think about it, and I actually think maybe because I'm an engineer, I always think of it in a sciencey way. Maybe the basalt, like you say, the magnetic crystals are, like there's maybe like localized lightning, or there's like light phenomena because of the crystallized content. Maybe that's why that scares the natives.
There's a lot that we still are yet to understand about crystals, including their property to retain information. The ultimate computer in the future is going to be crystal, and you can basically have unlimited amount of storage. So never again gigabytes, terabytes. This will be crystal bytes.
For sure.
The whole memory of the entire universe.
For sure. Heather, do you want to jump in at this point?
I'm just reminded of reading John Michel's book, 12 Tribe Nations. I don't know if you've read it or not, but he talks about an ancient Druidic tradition of the Druids would sing these 12 notes, and it was a 24/7 watch. It was kind of like connecting to the universe at all times, and then later on the monks took over this practice. So you're reminding me of that connection with the importance of sound related to these energies and generating energy for healing, etc.
Yeah, that's another aspect of future sciences that's going to have great breakthroughs when we truly understand the nature of sound. And this is what I get into in the esoteric books, because these are truly of an esoteric nature. You wouldn't think of sound being a principle in healing, yet it is, and it's an emerging science. Using colors as well. Colors and light beams, ultraviolet, combined with sound, could someday give us huge breakthroughs, cancer cures, and a lot else.
Sure. It's funny, I was just talking to Heather before we took the call, Brad, and I was talking to an Irish harpist, and we're going to be seeing each other at the end of September, and I can't wait because she's one of the best harpists in Ireland. But I want to talk to her about the acoustic healing of the harp, that the way it can heal depression, and it's been research done in Wales on just what you were talking about. A Welsh harpist did some healing on some subjects and had great results. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the way of the future: healing and acoustics and crystals, for sure.
Yeah. So you heard it here first. When these subjects become exoteric, it'll be like getting on a plane and flying across the ocean, which 100 years ago would have seemed like a crazy notion. Here we are, doing it every day.
Sure.
I have to say this. Oh, sorry, James.
So, no, go ahead, please, Heather, please.
I have to say, visiting some of these sacred sites, like you mentioned Stonehenge before, I get a lot of auditory sensation, and sometimes it manifests as a voice, but Stonehenge, for me, it manifests as a very low rumbling sound, but it goes on a scale, and some of these sites have a much higher vibration, depending upon the age and how many stones are around, etc. But it seems like the stones actually were used as some kind of conductor of energy and memory conducer also, in addition to the crystal, though, has a much higher vibration. So it's just really interesting to me, the sensations that the stone versus the crystals produce at some of these sites.
That's a very astute observation, Heather.
Brad, did you ever make it to the hypogeum? Did you ever get to the hypogeum in Malta?
In Malta, I when I was working on the Sacred Places North America book, the country of Malta got my ferry ticket over from Sicily.
Oh, wow.
Put me up in a hotel, provided me a tour guide,
wow.
Knew I was a journalist, got me to all the other sites. But they said the hypogeum, it's a 6-month waiting list.
Yeah,
we can't help you out.
Yeah,
I was right above it. I was at Tarshin, which is just right around the corner. I saw the door to get down into it, but they couldn't get me in.
Yeah.
So I had some friends out here in San Francisco who got married in Malta, and I said, "Wait, you're going there? Make a reservation." And they came back, and they brought me a CD of the acoustic soundings are just phenomenal down in the hypogeum. And,
yeah, that's why I asked, because it's very hard to get into. Like you say, the waiting list. I think depends on winter months to summer months. But summertime, it's 6 months. Like it's booked out. They only let something like 10 people in an hour, and they only open it for 8 hours. And there is a reason for that, because of the breath creates all the mildew on the walls. They're trying to protect it. and that's why I asked you, because of the acoustics. I think it's just it's the most bizarre place I have ever been on the planet, and I've had the pleasure of going there. But I went twice and I didn't get in, and I got there. I had to book it out. I went specifically because I booked in advance. But yeah, if anybody's going to Malta, book it out and get there. But yeah, Targen's pretty special as well. Like, you know, Malta.
Yeah.
The layers of history in Malta, Brad, is just incredible. It just keeps on going. It's just layer after layer.
The oldest temples in Europe are in Malta. And what I found really interesting is that there are almost exact replicas of the triple spiral in Newgrange that can also be found in Malta. So they call this the Beaker people culture. And they think that in the summertime they would have just taken a boat trip up to Ireland, kind of like we do for vacation, a nice cooler place, and then just come back to Malta in the summer. If you know where you're going, it's not that long of a route. Catch the wind and the currents. You could be there in a few weeks or a month. And
it's all pretty much hugging the coastline too. It's not like open seas. It's like oceanic, but yes, it's hugging the coastline. It's
you never lose sight of the land, really.
Exactly. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up with that.
Malta, I would...
Sorry, Brad.
Oh, just say, as well as some of the places we've been discussing, that Malta would certainly be on my top 10 list of destinations in Europe. And of course, I cover many of the sites in my book.
Sure. Well, I was going to wrap things up with that. I just wanted to give the title of the book, Brad. It's Sacred Places in Europe, 108 Destinations. And I did want to mention Malta just to wrap things up, because I think it's a very, very special place in Europe. I agree, top 10 for sure. Brad, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Oh, wow. And I want to see a copy of that picture with the Dr. Jarl's setup, if you would kindly permit me privately. I don't know if you have it, but...
how about we do it right now?
Oh, wow. Yeah, because it's quite a complex setup. I remember you describing it in the article. It's quite a unique setup, and it looks very mathematical and very engineering and very scientific. It looks like you can see the physics of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the book it's in, called Future Esoteric, The Unseen Realms. And I have a chapter called The Secret Sciences. Here we go. And here are Dr. Jarl's drawings.
Oh, wow.
Come in a little closer so you can see them with a little description there. Those two drawings. So he gave the overhead view on the right, and then this is the trajectory of the boulder, making it up to the top of the cliff face.
Didn't they? Heather, we're doing an esoteric show in the future with this guy.
We got to do it again, yeah.
That's right, definitely.
Well, but and I'm glad we did the show today anyway. But we'll definitely have to get you back for an esoteric show. Just to finish up, did they not suppress the Dr. Jarl's reports on this?
They did, and he even has video that has never been released and never been seen. As soon as he got back from the trip, they just basically said, "Oh, that's great. Let's have all your research," and
put it in a vault.
Nobody ever saw it again.
Wow, wow. Heather, you got any final comments before I say goodnight?
I just wanted to thank Brad. Your book is so usable and it's so unique, and I'm definitely going to be taking it to visit some of these sites that I haven't been to yet. So thank you for creating it.
Thank you, Heather,
and for sharing with us.
You're very welcome.
No. Well, listen, Brad, I really thank you for the show today. We're going to get back for an esoteric for sure, and it's great to see you, great to chat to you. What a lovely soul you are. But yeah, I thank you for your time, Brad.
Oh, thank you, guys. I really can't believe how it went by so quick. We could have been here for all day.